So for those of you in Melbourne and Sydney, if you ever have a Kanban question, reach out to me.
And for the Wellington people, to me, yeah, or like New Zealand people, actually, not just Wellington. Yeah, so the recording is on. Over to you, Sonya.
Thanks, Sonya.
Thank you very much, guys, for the introduction. It's a real pleasure to be with you today, and I was looking forward to meeting all of you, and I'm super excited to spend this morning from Belgium together with you. Indeed, today I would like to talk about achieving fast, smooth, and predictable delivery of customer value using Kanban analytics. But before I jump into the details on how we get there, I would like to spend some time explaining some of the fundamentals of the Kanban method. Okay. So the Kanban method suggests an approach of managing the flow of work instead of workers. It's a system that works upon the speed and efficiency of your process by minimizing waste and team overburden. It switches the focus from individual to collective performance. I would like to go through the main Kanban practices suggested by the method. There are 6 core Kanban practices: visualize workflow, limit work in progress, manage flow, make policies explicit, implement feedback loops, and improve collaboratively. The first practice is visualize the flow of work, or mapping your value stream on a Kanban board. Your value stream is essentially the series of steps required to deliver a product or a service to your customer. Each state corresponds to a list. Each card represents a piece of work. Work flows through the process as cards move across the board. This gives you complete visibility on how much work you have on your plate and significantly improves the collaboration within the team. Using the Kanban board alone isn't enough to support a smooth and efficient workflow. Your processes can still get stuck if there is too much work in progress, also referred as WIP. Too much WIP leads to this, and your team will be forced to constantly switch the context, trying to handle all work at once. Constant context switching is not effective, and it comes with its cost. In fact, it's estimated to cause at least a 10% penalty per switch. Multitasking makes your team members feel busier while delivering less. Too much WIP leads to overburden, poor service quality, and negative effect on your employees' engagement. You need to control the amount of work that goes in and out of the system to prevent that effect. Implementing WIP limits helps your team complete work faster by staying focused. The point is to get more things done rather than doing more things. An efficient workflow requires consistent management of work that goes through your process to keep tasks entering the stream in a smooth manner. Balancing demand with capacity is the key here. Managing flow also means removing obstacles and eliminating bottlenecks. The practice of applying WIP limits will introduce some idle time to your team members. So if your team is not able to start new work as the WIP limit has been reached, they will have to collaborate with each other and swarm outstanding tasks to complete them faster. The focus is moved to the impediments in the system and their prompt resolution. Process policies are essentially the rules based on which your work items should be treated and interact with each other. Every policy should be made explicit, from when certain tasks enter the workflow to when they're considered completed. It is crucial that everyone on the team understands how to handle the different types of work items. You can use classes of service to group tasks according to their priority by using labels or custom fields. Different policies apply to different levels of priority. The policies in place for efficiency will be quite different to those for routine maintenance, for example. There are 4 default classes of service in Kanban: expedite, fixed delivery date, standard, and intangible. Expedites are tasks that must be taken care of immediately. They suspend other work items in progress and should be completed as soon as possible. They're also allowed to break the WIP limits.
One sec, Sonia, maybe I can hear some background noise. Maybe if during the presentation, everybody can just go on mute unless, other than Sonia, that would be pretty good for everybody else, I think.
All right, so basically expedites are allowed to break the WIP limits. Normally only one task on this class can be in progress at any one time. Fixed delivery date is a work that must be delivered before certain dates. This could include important project milestones, compliance tasks, or release dates. An example class of service policy would be that fixed delivery date can make up no more than 10% of the work in progress. Standard class of service would represent features and improvements. The bulk of your work items should be in this class of service, and a policy would be that they should be processed by the first come, first serve algorithm. Intangible class is used to collect necessary but non-urgent maintenance tasks that often get pushed aside for higher priorities. Keep in mind that an intangible task can become an expedite if it is neglected for a long enough time. For the big picture overview, Kanban meetings, referred also as the Kanban cadences, are used to set your direction on a daily, weekly, and long-term basis. Each meeting incorporates feedback from other meetings to make informative decisions. The Kanban method suggests 7 cadences you can use to foster communication between all parties. The purpose of these cadences can be divided into 3 groups: getting things done, doing the things right, and doing things better, and each of them feeding the others with new information. Kanban practices focus on improvement via incremental evolutionary changes. The method provides all the means to monitor continuous improvement efforts. As the systems improve, delivery times decrease, and your workflow becomes faster and more predictable. The Kanban method helps you achieve faster, better, and more predictable service delivery by optimizing your workflow efficiency. By the absolute minimum to successful Kanban implementation is establishing a Kanban pull system. Visualize your workflow and limit your work in progress. Instead of pushing tasks into the process, let teams pull work only when there is a demand for it and they have the capacity to handle that demand. There are 3 basic flow metrics that can help you measure the performance of your workflows. Cycle time, which measures the time between starting and finishing work on a given task. Throughput, which is the number of tasks delivered on a certain day, week, or month. And work in progress, or the amount of tasks available in each process state. To be able to provide shorter delivery time, we should strive to reduce our cycle times. To achieve that, we need to limit work in progress and keep it consistent. As a result, we will be able to produce more value and thus throughput will increase. Nave is the tool to help you track and analyze your flow metrics. It's a Kanban analytics suite that helps teams optimize their workflow performance in order to achieve fast, smooth, and predictable delivery of customer value. We help managers establish a stable system to be able to develop more predictability in their delivery processes. We enable our customers to identify impediments in their workflow, as well as make accurate delivery forecasts. We provide integrations with the most popular management tools on the market: Jira, Trello, Asana, and Azure DevOps. Nave is available as an add-on in the Atlassian Marketplace and the Trello Power-Ups directory. We also provide a manual data upload version for those customers who use Jira Server and their instances are not publicly available. That option is quite suitable as well in case you support strict security policies and you need to anonymize your data. You can use our API to upload your files and automate the process as well. At Nave, we pull all of your data from the moment of your board creation. There is no limit on the historical records you may want to analyze. We synchronize any changes immediately, so you can track your progress in real time. Basically, any update in your Kanban board are instantly reflected in your graphs. Behind the scene, we fetch all the data from the Kanban board. We analyze the activities of your cards, and we build the charts to help you manage your workflow effectively. And here is our current analytics suite. But let me quickly show you how it works. So how do you know how much is in progress and how much is actually being done? The cumulative flow diagram provides an overview of the current state of your process by tracking the total number of tasks in progress each day. The graph is built from colored bands, with each band indicating how many tasks are present in each process state. You can also see the accumulated number of tasks completed, those in the done state, in the selected time frame. The horizontal distance between the top and the bottom line of a CFD area at any point along the graph is your approximate average cycle time. Approximate average cycle time shows how long it took on average for items to complete on the selected day. The cumulative flow diagram enables you to spot bottlenecks instantly. If one or more of the areas that represent work in progress start expanding, then it signifies a bottleneck stemming from the workflow. The top line of the graph represents the arrival rate of tasks, while the bottom line shows their departures. We need to monitor how the lines move over time in order to maintain a stable system. If WIP is increasing, then the distance between the lines will expand. This means that the arrival rate is higher than the departure rate and denotes that there is a bottleneck in the system and your team is struggling to deliver results. To maintain a stable system, strive to keep your WIP as consistent as possible. If WIP is consistent, arrival rate and departure rate lines will grow in sync and the distance between them will stay equal. It is important to say, though, that the data displayed on a CFD depicts only what has happened for a given process, and it shouldn't be used for any type of future predictions. When it comes to future predictions, there are two approaches trying to provide the answer to when will this be done question: an estimate and a forecast. What's the difference? Estimates are predictions based on guesswork, judgment, or intuition. The prediction is delivered as a single value. It could be a date or a number of days, for example. An estimate doesn't involve any probability of its occurrence. Forecasts, on the other hand, are based on historical performance data. The prediction is communicated as a range of values and the probability of those values occurring. Forecasting is faster, cheaper, and much more reliable than estimating. In Kanban and in flow-based systems in general, teams commit to the individual task by making just-in-time commitments. Just-in-time commitment is a commitment that happens at the last possible moment. This is the moment when we start working on something. This approach provides us with a lot of flexibility, as we are able to reprioritize up until the moment the task gets put in the workflow. Once the work is in the process, it is considered committed, and the team should do everything in their power to meet that commitment. Commitments should be communicated as forecasts. They should come with a range of cycle times and the probability of achieving each of them. For example, we expect this task to be delivered in less than 10 days, and we're 85% certain it will be. And there is a 95% chance to deliver this task within 13 days. The cycle time scatter plot can be of great help when it comes to making probabilistic forecasts. This diagram displays all of your completed tasks as dots scattered on a plot. It tells you how long tasks have taken to complete. By observing and analyzing your cycle times and lead times, You will be able to evaluate how fast you're delivering value to your customers. The goal is to reduce the delivery times to an optimal level for your team. The dotted horizontal lines stretching across the graph are called percentile lines. We use percentiles to establish service level agreements and define the probability of different commitment points being met. For example, the 50th percentile on our scatter plot points to 8 days. This means that half of the tasks so far have been completed in less than 8 days. We can now say that any future task we take on has a 50% chance of being finished in less than 8 days. Of course, the percentile you use to define SOAs largely depends on your context. You and your clients may be happy with an 85% certainty, or you both may need a confidence level that's higher than that. You can also filter your data by class of service. It is highly likely that the 85th percentile for fixed delivery date comes with a different cycle time than the 85th percentile for expedites, for example. That way, you can provide different SLAs for different work items you're committing. The best chance for delivering on time comes when you make sure you start on time. When you start working on your assignments too early, you're both wasting capacity on work that is not yet due and running out of capacity for work that is due. When you start too late, though, you risk delaying your work and breaking your commitments. The longer you wait, the higher the chance of a delay. In order to identify the best time to start, look at your probability forecast for the specific class of service you're interested in. The ideal time range to start your work is any time between the 99th percentile and the 85th percentile. Let's say you need to deliver on 30th of May, and your forecast says that there is a 99% chance to finish a standard task within 23 days and 85% chance to finish it within 11 days. This means that the ideal time to start your work is between 23 and 11 days before the delivery date, or any time in the range between 7th May and 19th of May. By initiating your work within the normal start date range, you will have at least 85% chance of delivering it on time. To optimize your workflow performance, you need to break your delivery times down to smaller pieces and evaluate the improvement opportunities. This is best achieved in the cycle time breakdown chart. The diagram displays the cycle times of your completed tasks split by process state. By analyzing the different sections on the bars, you can assess how the time spent in each state affects the overall time needed to finish your work. The most important information to get from the cycle time breakdown chart is how the data changes in time. It is an indicator of continuous improvement. If the longest sections are going down, this is a sign that your improvement efforts are paying off. But if your cycle times are going up, it is better to take a step back and analyze the reasons behind that behavior. The cycle time histogram shows the frequency distribution of the completion times of the tasks in your workflow. By analyzing the distribution of your cycle times, you will be able to determine whether there is too much variability in your process. A wide spread indicates your cycle times vary significantly and your workflow is inconsistent. Average cycle time is a measure of performance. In this chart, we show the mean, median, and mode average cycle times and how the trends build over time. Ideally, the lines should be close to each other, stay even, or go down. If the values are going up, then you might need to reevaluate your work in progress limits or alter your process policies in order to establish a faster delivery workflow. The aging chart enables you to track your current work in progress. It uses the same visual format as your Kanban board, with each column representing a state in your workflow. The aging chart shows how many days a task has already spent in progress. The colored zones draw the timeline of how your tasks have advanced in the past. For example, the green zones show the times that 50% of your previous tasks have spent in each state. By observing how your current work is moving through the zones, you have a pretty good chance of meeting your commitments. The higher the dots, the larger the chance of delay. We recommend taking a closer look at the tasks that move to the yellow zone. These tasks have already spent more time in your process than half of the tasks completed so far. As long as your tasks don't cross the percentiles you use to define your SLAs, you will be delivering on time. If you've committed to the 85th percentile, for example, and your work item just moved to the orange zone, crossing the 70th percentile, don't cut from the scope or don't rush the implementation to be able to deliver it on time. That will sacrifice the quality of your work. Instead, in order to make sure you keep your commitment, expedite your task. By expediting a task, you're effectively suspending all of the remaining work that's currently in progress. Essentially, you borrow time that would otherwise be reserved for another task in order to fulfill your commitment. However, keep in mind that expediting work generates flow depth, so make sure that the short-term benefits are worth it in the long run. The aging chart allows you to change your basis date to see how your process looked like on a certain day in the past. It's very useful during retrospectives to see how your tasks were aging back then. I have been talking about stable systems for a while now. According to Little's law, maintaining a stable system depends on two main factors: your work in progress and your average age of work in progress. For these two metrics, the key is consistency. Stable systems are determined by keeping both your WIP and the average age of your WIP consistent. And the more stable your delivery workflow is, the more predictable it becomes. The average age of WIP and cycle time. Hello, welcome. The average age of WIP and cycle time are essentially the same metric. Only cycle time is measured against completed tasks, whereas the age of a task is a measure concerning tasks that are still in progress. If the average age of your WIP stays roughly equal on a daily basis, then its trend line will be linear, neither increasing nor decreasing over time. This means that you're maintaining a stable system. If you find that the line is sporadic, at times increasing or decreasing dramatically, this points to an inconsistent average age and, at the root cause of these spikes, bottlenecks in the system that need to be addressed. The throughput run chart displays the throughput of your team on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis and compares its values over time. Each bar consists of colored section representing the type of completed work. The throughput breakdown chart on the top helps you evaluate what kind of requests are demanding most of the time. It is especially effective when you want to emphasize the high volume of expedites requests or failure demand, for example, you're handling, for example. The throughput line chart visualizes how trends have developed. Ideally, the line should stay even or increase smoothly. The closer the values are, the smoother your process. The throughput histogram allows you to visualize how consistently your team is delivering results. It is calculating your throughput averages using the mean, median, and mode values of your throughput frequency distribution. And your average throughput over the month is the most important metric you want to discover from this chart. It is a representation of your capacity to deliver results. Over time, you can identify trends in your delivery rates. Ideally, your average throughput should increase smoothly or stay at similar levels. Flow efficiency is another key metric in Kanban, telling you how much time you spend actually working on your assignments. Essentially, flow efficiency is the ratio between your active time and total time. While trying to improve their flow efficiency, many teams simply start working on more commitments, hoping it will bolster their production rate. This, however, is a misconception, as more work in progress means more multitasking and queuing. Along with an imbalance between demand and throughput, this is in fact one of the most common causes behind long delivery times. Any reduction of inactive time will improve your overall cycle time. Looking at wait time is usually the easiest and cheapest area to investigate first when it comes to process improvement. Improving flow efficiency starts with visualizing your wait. To be able to measure your flow efficiency, you have to design your Kanban board to support that concept. Make sure you divide the states in your workflow into working states where tasks are being worked on and queue states where tasks are held up waiting. Instead of pushing tasks into the process, teams pull work from the queue states once they finish what they've started. This is the foundation of a Kanban pull system. Using this approach, you will be able to measure the time spent in your queue states. You can use the flow efficiency chart to track the flow efficiency of your work items, as well as your average flow efficiency. Once you've identified the tasks with the longest waiting times, think about the reasons behind their delays. The higher your flow efficiency is, the faster and smoother tasks flow through your process. You can also assess how your efficiency trends changed over time to evaluate your improvement efforts. Your due date performance is a measure of reliability. Furthermore, it's a factor determining the quality of your initial forecasts. You can evaluate your due date performance by comparing the time between the start and the due date of a task with the actual time it took to deliver your work. The due date performance chart can be of great help here. For each work item, it visualizes the predicted time versus the actual time and plots a regression line of your performance. The predicted time is calculated as the difference between your commitment point, or the moment when the work entered your workflow, and the due date of the task, while your completion time is the difference between the same starting point and the task's actual done date. The line plotted through the chart is called a regression line. It runs roughly through the middle of all the data points. The slope of the line is the correlation between your predicted time and the actual time you spent finishing your work. It helps you assess the accuracy of your predictions and evaluate how efficiently your system is running. The most important part of analyzing your due date performance is assessing whether your work has been delivered on time. The on-time delivery widget will display the percentage of times that you managed to deliver before your due date approached and how such trends have developed. For example, if you released 10 features today and 4 of them were overdue, your due date performance for that day would be 60%. By using probabilistic forecasting to set your commitments, starting your assignments on time, and actively managing your work in progress, you will be able to produce more accurate future predictions and keep your commitments, which will ultimately result in a higher customer satisfaction. To come up with a range of probabilities when forecasting completion dates for multiple tasks, we use Monte Carlo delivery date simulation. The simulation relies on a large number of random trials based on past throughput data to predict the throughput for a future time frame. You define the start date and the number of tasks, and the simulation will provide a range of delivery dates and the probability coming with each date. For any day in the future, it will use the throughput of a random day in the past to simulate how many work items are likely to get done. The simulation is repeated tens of thousands of times before the results are presented in the form of a probability distribution, with percentiles increasing from left to right. The further you go in time, the greater the certainty of completing all tasks. Monte Carlo number of tasks simulation works on the same principle, but instead of predicting the due date of a certain amount of tasks, it produces a probabilistic forecast on how many items can be completed within a certain time frame. If you're interested in having a demo session with your own data at Nave, please contact me and I'll be happy to schedule a call. We're giving away a special discount today. You can save 10% on your annual plan if you subscribe until 30th of August. I'll send the discount code in a moment. I hope you got some valuable takeaways out of this presentation, and it will help you achieve faster, smoother, and more predictable delivery of customer value. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonya. And yeah, we can start the Q&A sessions. Guys, are there any questions that you have from this presentation?
I'll start at Sika here. So first of all, Sonya, thank you for spending the time and sharing it with us. It's very interesting. Questions? There's always many discussions around Kanban versus, story points and things like that. And, predictions and estimating is always a difficult problem. Would it be right, like you talked about the stability of the system. So my understanding of, how good Kanban predictability is first of all, it hinges on, breaking the work down in ideally in fairly even sizes, yeah, and also establishing that history they could talk about, yes, so you can do the prediction. So I always have a feeling that this works best for more mature teams, yeah, that are good at breaking the work down, and B have, they've learned how to limit work in progress. They have a really fairly stable delivery. So for me, when I look at applying this, I look at more mature teams, and it may not be as suitable for beginner teams or teams that haven't worked together before. Is that correct, or is that not correct?
Yeah, it's a long journey to get there, to get to the stable system and produce accurate results and meet your commitments and be reliable. It's a long journey. Teams who haven't used any approach of managing of work, if they're just getting started, what we've seen is that it's a big challenge to produce an accurate future prediction. And the reason is, first, because they don't have the data based on which to produce a certain commitment. And second, because even if they have the data, there is so much variability in the system that it is impossible to come up with an accurate result. In this case, our focus should always be to start stabilizing the system. It doesn't have to be, that process doesn't have to be related with splitting work items or anything like this. It's more like identifying the capacity of the team and trying to align the demand with it. This can be achieved with a Kanban pool system, with a work in progress limits. This can be, it could be step by step. First, we can start with applying WIP limits on a person level. Then we can, as soon as the team matures, we can apply WIP limits on a process state level, on a column level. And at some point, when they feel comfortable with WIP limits and the results are already available, it would make perfect sense to apply WIP limits to the whole system, a com WIP. So by adopting the Kanban practices, the main Kanban practices, will help moving forward to a stable system. And the more stable the system is, the less variability there will be in the process. And the less variability there is in the process, the more accurate forecasts it will produce. Does it make sense?
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think you have to start somewhere and just gather data and then start to analyze. It's one of the Kanban principles is start with what you have now, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Hello, I have just two questions.
Hey.
Hang on. One sec, can you keep it in a sec? Because there was Darren in the chat who asked, does a swarm to unstick a task school the metrics at all? Darren, do you want to pop up and explain your question? No?
Yeah.
No.
I was headphones and hands-free, but yeah, it's if you've suddenly got a different measure between so like man days and days elapsed, if you've got lots of people helping, does that actually make things a little harder to understand?
It really depends on what's the goal. What are you trying to achieve with this approach?
I was just thinking more about if you already had a metrics and charts that were about elapsed days or man days, would suddenly putting 5 people on a task just to get it gone be a problem?
Well, when you talk about man days, you essentially estimate the efforts on the work item, right? So the problem with this approach is that the effort, the time you spent to complete a certain functionality is not related with the time you will need to start and deliver the task. Because your lead time includes the time that that item is going to stay in the queue and wait until there is a free slot to be started. Then it has to be started and move through the whole process, through the whole team. It may move through analysis, development, testing, deployment, and stuff like that. There are different people involved in that picture, and most certainly they won't start right after each other. There will be a certain amount of time that no one is going to work on that specific item. So together with the queue item, you should take into consideration your idle time when your work is already in the process. Plus, we have to take into consideration the time spent for any defects and bugs that may occur, the time for any bottlenecks, if there is no one, for example, that can handle the task, there is no capacity in some of the process states. Then you should take into consideration the blockers time, which is the time you wait for external feedback or anything that is outside of your control. And in the end, you will have that delivery. So the time you need to deliver work is the queue time plus the effort time plus the coordination time plus the block time plus the defect time plus the bottlenecks time. Can you see how using man hours has nothing to do with the commitment that you're making to deliver something? When it comes to estimating by story points or man hour or t-shirt sizes or any other approach of the effort of the work, it is extremely useful when it comes to the prioritization mechanism. So if you have multiple tasks, for example, with the same priority, for example, based on the market opportunity or based on cost of delay, and if you have multiple tasks from the same priority, it makes sense to include the effort estimation as a criteria on when you're going to start this task. But if you want to use that estimation to commit to a delivery date, it is a really risky process. It is a really risky process.
My idea I had a process that would take about 20 man hours myself to do with a fixed delivery date within 4 weeks. But after 10 man hours worth of work, it was, where is the answers to the questions? I have to stop that and it gets stalled. And if you then add more and more people and resources, you'd be depriving other tasks, possibly, because the fixed date was rampaging towards the critical.
Yeah, it's a very interesting and complex scenario. So first of all, you need to have a stable system in place in order to make that commitment, right?
Yeah.
Then at the moment that you make that commitment, you need to make sure that you start on time, as I showed you using the forecast from the scatter plot. You need to make sure that you start on time. Then if something goes wrong, you need to reevaluate the forecast while you're already working on your assignments. And if there is a problem, we need to focus on reducing your idle time. Yes, of course, you can add more capacity, but that's expensive and that's also time consuming. So ideally, the first step should be to optimize your workflow performance by making sure that you remove bottlenecks, you remove blockers, you remove most of the idle time that is already collected from the flow efficiency to achieve an optimal level of performance for that team. As long as you have a stable system and you have a consistent WIP, then you will have accurate forecasts, and the system is going to do it for you. It is going to give you the estimate, it is going to give you the forecast, it will relieve team overburden, and it will basically decrease the time that you need to deliver this work. But indeed, the more stable the system is, the more predictable it will become. So that should always be the focus. Limit WIP, make sure that you don't multitask. Let the team pull work instead of pushing work, and measure the performance of your workflow. Identify bottlenecks, see where the problems come from, discuss them, take actionable steps to improve them, and then evaluate your improvement efforts. This is a continuous journey. It never ends. There will be always a new bottleneck, and the more mature your team is, the easier it will be to adjust to the market demands and the market changes, and the market is changing constantly. So you will have to adopt and change with the market changes as well.
Yeah, so there was one pretty good comment from Neil as well, Darren. If it's not like Kanban is not a framework, it's not a goal that you're going towards. It is. Yeah. It helps you to just really see what there is. So if you are actually observing these impediments or this sub-optimizations, that is just a sign for you to think of how can we improve things. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, it's actually a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. Kanban is not a framework, it's not a methodology. Kanban is an approach of managing the flow of work. It's not a process, it's not a predefined steps that you need to follow. No. It is an approach that is working on your own context, your own business workflow. It helps you optimize your workflow. It doesn't have any prescriptive structure. No, that's not the case. It has principles and it has practices. That's it.
Cool. There was one other person that I actually cut off who had a question.
Yeah. I think that was Carlo.
Yeah, that's me. Thank you very much. I have two practical questions on the tool. The first one is how easy is to add a new class of service. The second one is about flight level. How easy is to have metrics on different flight levels, for example, team level and product level on the same time?
We provide a lot of flexibility when it comes to the configuration of your dashboard. Essentially, we connect to your board and you need to map your lists into to-do, doing, and done states. Once you do that, we will fetch all the labels, all the members, all the custom fields that you support in your board. So as long as your classes of service are displayed using a label or a custom field, we are going to fetch them. And if you change them, if you add more, if you remove some of them, we will take that into consideration. And then you will be able to use your class of service as a filter and then validate your data based on the different classes of service. Does that answer your first question?
Yes, thank you very much. Great.
And when it comes to flight levels, this is something that we're considering to have the so-called executive dashboard. This is something that is still a work in progress. It is going to be a dashboard on a high level, on a portfolio level, that will fetch information from all of your dashboards. So at this moment, our dashboards work on a board level, which means on a team level. The executive dashboard will be able to collect all the metrics from all of your teams, all of your boards, to help you make strategic decisions and see the high level picture. This is something that we're currently working on, and I'll be happy to keep you posted with the progress if you want to.
Yes, thank you very much. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I thought I saw Addy put a hand up as well earlier. Did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for this on-point presentation, Sonya. I just wanted to ask, how would you recommend to start off with a new junior team to make them familiar with Nave and let them start using it? Is there some kind of onboarding procedure or something that you can recommend for junior teams?
Yeah, what I would do is to keep it simple. Like, don't jump into Monte Carlo right away. Please don't. Just keep it simple. Start with managing the work in progress. So start with the aging chart. It's fairly intuitive. They can see how the dots are moving across the board, and they can follow up and make sure that there are no abandoned tasks, or there are no tasks that have been forgotten or delayed. So the aging chart, the cycle time scatter plot is the other one, which is very similar to this one, but it works on the completed work. So they can see their performance, they can see how much time it took for their work to be completed. And finally, the cumulative flow diagram. So basically just to give them understanding of how work in progress is moving over time would help them get there. We have a set of videos in our YouTube channel that you can check it out. They're for beginners, so you might find them useful. One very important thing though, and this is for all of you, and I hope that all of you guys will take at least this takeaway from today's presentation. Don't use metrics to judge people. Never. Use metrics to measure your continuous improvement. Use metrics to judge your system, to judge your process policies, to judge your management practices. Never use metrics to judge people. It is wrong. This can never be relevant. And even if you make that mistake, people will get demotivated and they will start cheating the system. They will start providing inaccurate data. They won't move cards, or will move cards faster than it actually is. So it's very important, the mindset that you have when you start working with an analytics tool or data-driven tool. Use it to improve your workflows, to improve your system, to improve your practices. It's not about the people, it's about the flow of work. So that should be the focus. You need to track your flow of work, and every person in the team should track the flow of work. Not themselves, not their own performance, not anyone else's individual performance. We're interested in the performance of the team, of the performance of how the work moves through the workflow, how fast it goes to the customer, what's the quality of that work. So yeah, that's my best suggestion.
I think that was a really good point also, and back to the practices. In Kanban, we manage flow and we let people self-organize around it. We manage work and we let people self-organize around it. Another principle. And I think there is always a risk when you use performance data or things like that people start to behave differently to match the data. This is not what we are doing in Kanban. We really like to analyze what are the real problems, the root causes, and change the processes and the way work flows through the system, and not judge the people. That's a really, 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 really important point. Thanks, Sonya, for that.
So I was going to ask a question. Thanks, Sonya, for the conversation, for the presentation. Very good. But the question I was going to ask was going to maybe go off at a bit of a sidetrack. So if you're close to the end, maybe you don't want to take it.
That's okay, please. Go.
So it was, look, I get what you're saying at a, let's say, I think at a software development team level, it all works very nicely. In fact, a lot of what you've said sort of echoes some of the experiences I've had with Jira, you know, Rally and so forth. I was sort of interested in the sort of more, your thoughts around how to manage flow, if you like, or just work in process WIP limits more at an enterprise level. And so the example I've got is an organization, and it's actually a small organization, only 12 people, but we have a hardware product which has 2 or 3 people working on it. We have the software for the hardware product, which has a team of 5 or 6 working on it. We have actually 2 hardware products. So there's another person working on the second hardware product. And then we have a support desk recording tickets. So effectively you have probably 3 or 4 different systems, you know, one of which is an MRP system that records your hardware assembly. Second system is, what did we use? I think we used Jira for, we used Jira for tickets for the software stories. We had Zendesk for the software, for the support. And so it was this idea of how do you get a picture of the flow of work through the organization. And once again, I'm talking about a very small organization, 12 people, but it's quite a diverse set of products and, it's actually only 2 products, but quite diverse in terms of the different jobs and the different tools that are used. Do you have some advice on that?
Well, to be honest, I don't have that much experience with such an environment because we're mainly working on a team level. Probably Silke and Daniel, they can give you a little bit more insights on that. But what I can do to give you as an advice is to make sure that you optimize the different teams individually and then connect them. Because if you have like upstream and downstream process and the upstream is not efficient, the downstream will be starving, right? So when it comes to the overall value stream, it makes sense to optimize the performance of each individual pieces and then connect them together. Because especially if they're dependent from each other, like if you need to have to analyze something before it goes to development, it is still counted as lead time. The client is still waiting for this. So as long as the upstream is not efficient, it breaks the overall process. It becomes the bottleneck in the whole system. So I'd assume that the best thing you can go for is to start working on a local level and optimizing the different workflows individually. And then the second step would be to connect them with each other to make sure they are performing as efficiently as possible. But
in the particular example I give you, there was actually a very easy bottleneck, which was one person who worked across the hardware and the software side of things, but that's another story. But okay, thanks. Yeah, appreciate.
Daniel, Silke, you probably have certain scenarios during your teaching practices. What's your observation?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had this sort of scenario a number of times before, and effectively what we try and do is we don't do anything overly complex. We just apply Kanban at a different level of abstraction. So instead of applying Kanban like Sonya said, at a team level, you're starting to apply it at a company level. So, you know, if you're doing, I'm not sure, some sort of thing, construct like a project or a feature development that goes through each of those, then you limit WIP on that basis through the company. And you effectively use the same sort of mechanisms in terms of limiting WIP. I mean, I've done this with marketing teams, with HR teams that are in product companies, and how that interrelates with any other development or other pieces of work that go on. So you start to see your overall company as a set of interconnected services. Well, you know, and some connections might be deeper than others. And I've done some modeling on that in some organizations as well. So you can see which items are highly connected, which items are fairly disconnected. So those ones that are disconnected, you can let them run on their own. But those that are interconnected, as Sonya said, you need to start to look at the overall flow there. But this is something that Silke and I do in our training sessions. So if you're interested in, we're going to be doing some Kanban system design courses where we touch on this kind of thing online coming up shortly. So,
yeah.
Sounds interesting.
Another thing, if you have to start on a team level and you don't have that the mandate to start on a kind of higher level in the company in terms of feature work or something like this, what might help is to just really visualize the upstream, so the demand side, and just visualize what actually really comes into the teams, and visualize that and let people upstream negotiate about what's most important and things like that. But that is also, as Daniel mentioned, something you will learn in the trainings.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You can work your way up. There are no hierarchies. It's just, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. So we are 3 minutes past 7. There is still some person just now trying to get in. I think Daniel just let him in. Awesome. Are there any more questions? It's okay if people drop out at this point in time, and Europe probably they have their first stand-ups of the day at this point in time. Anything else? What I was interested in, and I think there was a slide, Sonya, and when we had our session yesterday, I found it really interesting to find out that you see Nave. And I remember just David when he was in our meetup saying that Nave currently meets the metrics the most compared to what we are actually teaching in the trainings. And you said that it is a really good tool if you're just starting with Kanban, and also the tools that interconnect with it. Do you want to maybe have to finish have a like an explanation about that at the end?
Yes.
I find that really interesting.
Absolutely. So we are Kanban practitioners on our own, and we are very we have partnership with Kanban University. We work very closely together to make sure that we implement the material that you guys are teaching and they're teaching into practice. So to enable you to measure the workflow metrics and to optimize and to implement continuous improvement within your organization. The idea of the product was born exactly coming from one of the principles of Kanban: start with what you do now. We wanted to have, we had our systems in place. We had Jira, we had the workflow set up in Jira, we have all the team working with Jira, we've made the investment, we optimized everything, and we just wanted to see how we're doing. We wanted to see if our improvement efforts are paying off. So we started building on Jira. There are amazing Kanban tools on the market. The problem was that we didn't want to move out from Jira because it suited a certain purpose that we had. We wanted to manage our software development process, and it worked perfectly fine to us with all the automations and all the integrations. This was something that we were already doing as a core activity within our organization, and we just wanted to apply Kanban on it. we didn't want to make any drastic changes moving along the way to business agility. So we started building over, and at some point it became obvious that Nave is a game changer because you can just plug it in to whatever you're using. Jira, Trello, Asana, Azure DevOps. Even if you use a physical board, you can just put your data in Excel and then upload it in Nave. So there is no limitation. Start with what you do now. Just plug it in and just start observing what's happening with your workflow. Start making decisions based on what you're seeing. So yes, we are very passionate Kanban practitioners, and we are implementing all the concepts that are coming out from the Kanban University. This is like the highest authority when it comes to Kanban at this moment. So yeah, David already mentioned about the triage tables last time. So this is something that we're going to support as well. So yes, pretty much what you're teaching, it's reflected in our tool, indeed.
I would like to add a comment if it's possible.
Of course.
Considering the value of all the charts and the discussion you could start with them, for me, it would be very helpful to get some indication to management to start with Gemba walks as well. As from my experience, the expectation of management is the team solves it. But that's not holding true if the limits of the team are set so that they can't influence certain circumstances. And I wonder why couldn't we induce something that this is a strange figure here or strange chart, please inspect by doing Gemba walks with the responsibles. Something like that, just a hint in the chart. This is strange, this is a pattern to watch. Please start discussing.
It's a very good point, and in fact we had this conversation yesterday internally. What we're performing is a so-called notification system that will enable you to specify certain thresholds. So for example, this is our WIP limit, or this is our commitment for cycle time. And at some point, if something goes above the threshold, you will get notified and pointed out to what went wrong. So your WIP limit has been reached or has been exceeded, or your work in progress already crossed the percentile that you've committed to. Stuff like this that will arrive directly to Slack, for example, or if we're also planning to develop a native mobile application for that purpose, something that's going to notify you at the moment that something went wrong. And then you will have more information what that is, what has happened, and then we can take it from there and discuss it within your context. So basically you will be the one who will define what's wrong pattern, because one thing could be a nightmare for one company and could be perfectly fine for another company. There is no formula. It's really about your context. You may feel fine for something, like if you're a very immature team, for example, crossing your commitments, breaking your commitments probably is not something new for you. But if you're really mature, this is really a big deal if you don't keep your commitments, right? Or it's very typical for immature teams to also break their WIP limits. At the very beginning, it's very hard to get used with it.
What we have actually is a team I'm working with that is trying to help others because they lost some crucial personnel, and then they are violating their own rules and their own limits. But it's not to criticize or anything. It's just because they see the needs of others and react as a team, and that is something that has to be given to management as a positive thing. And they should be absolutely supported in what they are doing, and the whole work stream should consider this as positive.
Absolutely.
Which
yes.
is just staring at charts is not the point. I mean, cycle times go up, and thus this discussion is needed, and it's not the team focus; it's the total focus of the whole work stream.
There is no point to look into the charts if there is no context behind it. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a picture.
Always the same.
I think there's also a difference between active and passive management. You're talking about a little bit more passive management where they're letting the teams do the improvements. But we talk about this in the Kanban community, the difference between Kaizen and Kaikaku, where Kaizen is things that the team can do, but there are other things that the team just can't do on their own. They need their management, they need their leadership to actually help make that change and take that next step forward. So, those things require real management, real leadership. And I think if the management is always taking a step back, then really they're not doing their job properly. They need to actually, be active in helping out the team, serving the team and their customers to enable the right outcome. So, if some of these charts and data items can spark that kind of conversation as well, that might benefit the overall flow, like that you mentioned, where people are moving around in between teams. Perhaps that's something one of the managers can step in to say, oh, well, I'm above all parts of this system, I can help out to try and fix it.
Exactly. That's maybe a good point. Sorry.
A different language again, because we already talked about manage the work, don't manage the people. And to add also to what Daniel said, is that that it shouldn't be a reporting tool, really. And that's how it might look like. So it's not reporting, it's really trying to make things better. And as Daniel said, you really need the managers to buy into that as well and to manage that.
And that's a good point, because I see there a lot of ignorance towards how these things in detail work. And I, as a coach, see myself's obligation to work with them, to teach them also, even not working as somebody in the Kanban team. In management, they do other things. They have to understand quite well what is going on and why it is so, and how to read these charts and how to react to them. That's maybe missing right now in my environment.
I think that is really the role of us coaches at the start, to at least until they are able to work with the metrics and all that themselves. I think you really, and the way to learn that is really through the trainings. That's where you learn how to coach that kind of stuff if you apply it straight away.
Are there other questions?
Pardon?
Are there other questions? No? All right. Well, I think we might start to wrap up then, Silke, because we've, a bunch of the participants have dropped off and finished. But I just wanted to say thank you very much for Sonya for coming along and sharing everything with us today. And Silke, did you want to say anything to wrap up?
Well, yeah, thank you so much, Sonya. It was a real value to have you here over in our Pacific bubble. And it's awesome to have this opportunity to have you here and show us some insights, not only in the tools but also the people behind the tools, like you in person, Sonya, and the brain juice you put into these tools. Have a little presentation of them and see how they might be of value for us. It actually also helped me to be able to consult my clients even better on Nave and how to use it. I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, it really helped. Thank you so much. And for those, I mean, it was a lot of metrics. It is part of the game. As Sonya said, don't jump into the Monte Carlo analysis straight away. And if you do want to start with simple things like lead time, throughput, just contact one of us for trainings or coaching. There are really simple things you can start with that will help improve things. And Daniel, is there anything you wanted to add? Because otherwise, I think you suggested we have a little bit of a socializing afterwards. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. There are still 22 people at the moment.
Yeah, I just put it to the group. Did you want to hang about or and have a bit of a chat, or you're quite happy to drop off?
That's okay. Yeah.
We can stop the recording now, I think.
Good point. Thank you.